Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. Winter weather advisories for snow continue to remain out here for the Copper River Basin just for the next couple hours. Due to end at about 7 p.m. Picked up about 5 to 8 inches storm total snowfall, mostly over the northern areas here, southern slopes of the Alaska Range. And still this evening, in fact, Northway down to 3/4 of a mile at times in snow, and Delta down to a half mile in snow, 24 degrees, and those winds kicking up to about 25 miles an hour from the west there. So these winter weather advisories here from the Alaska Range northward up to the Brooks Range, those are out through most of the day tomorrow for several more inches of snow, and then they cut off here about the mid-Tanana Valley areas, but extend a little farther to the west up here on those southern slopes of the mountains up there to the north. And bouncing over to the satellite imagery, pretty good storm here southwest of Shemya, and the front bringing the gale force winds in to the central Aleutians there late this afternoon, mostly west of Atka Island, and then dropping off here to about Kamchatka. And then down here to the south, typhoon that rolled into Japan last night, that's going to continue northeast and actually is going to get caught up in the jet here and then move eastward and should end up here south of the Aleutians about Tuesday afternoon. And that system is forecast to track, at least by one of the models, up into northwest Gulf of Alaska by Saturday morning. Otherwise, coming back to today, we had a pretty good storm again roll northward here last night, and you can see late this afternoon the front pushing well into Canada there. So the heavy rains and the gale force with storm force wind gusts that we're seeing across along the coast here and over the inside waters of the Panhandle began to diminish this afternoon, becoming more showery. Looked like a little bit of clearing showing up. Front trailing back here to the south. Rainfall amounts with that were anywhere from 1 to 3 inches along the North Gulf Coast here, and Yakutat picked up 2.5 inches of rain in the last 24 hours, with Haines picking up just under 2 inches in that same time period. Those winds starting to kick up now over Lincoln and Glacier Bay as the slow center pulls northward. Eldred Rock seeing gusts to about 65 miles an hour, or actually 54 knots, which is a little over 60 miles an hour in gusts. So those winds picking up in response to the rapidly rising pressures down here to the south and the falling pressures up over the Yukon. So those winds, gale force winds tonight, and then they'll be dropping off. See some clearing back off the coast. Mostly clear, Kodiak Island, some clouds around, northwest winds, 20 to 40 miles an hour in gusts. That extended back up into the Bristol Bay zone area there, and those gusty winds picking some volcanic ash up and moving it to the west side of Kodiak Island, resuspending the ash, not new volcanic ash, just from the Nova Rupta area there. No snow cover, it's been dry, so it's the winds are picking that ash up and blowing out. So it could reduce visibilities for a time tonight, maybe into tomorrow. But there were some variable clouds coming southward here over the interior, along with some areas of sunshine and temperatures on the chilly side. Winds, gusty north winds, again more to the east than they were yesterday, dropping back here along the coast. Pretty widespread area cloudiness over the Bering Sea. Extends all the way up across the Chukchi Sea, and then the front out here pushing eastward and north and then back to the northwest. You can see the back edge of that quite clearly there with clear skies coming over Kiska and Amchitka. And taking a look at the analysis today, there's a location of that front at about midday here, pushing into the central Aleutians, kind of a narrow band of gale force winds in advance of that. High pressure here along the coast, slowly shifting eastward, and then this storm center moving northward here into the interior. Currently about in this position with those south winds now kicking up over the northern areas. Again, the front pushing through. And right now, a lot less precipitation here going on than what I've got shown, but this was pretty good for earlier today with seeing those rainfall amounts. Isolated thunderstorms again as well here along the coast, especially with this trough coming in, as well as the advance of the front there, and quite an area of snow, as I mentioned. All snow here northway all the way up into the eastern Arctic, or actually the Yukon there. And those winds picking up over the northwest Canada, which may translate up across the eastern Arctic coast later on tonight and into tomorrow as this low center pulls northward. And then another trough brought some light snow and low visibilities at times to the western and central Arctic coast. Earlier today, that's sort of dropped in over the north slope this afternoon, and conditions improving a little bit back up along the coastline. Otherwise, you'll see for tonight, still showery conditions expected. The jet stream now kind of pushing off to the southeast a little bit, becoming, instead of south-southwesterly, it'll become more west-southwesterly with the colder air forcing it a little bit farther to the south. So it'll be showery through tomorrow, through tonight, and a pretty good band of showers up along the North Gulf Coast. Again, periods of snow, but not so heavy. The snow advisory ends over the Copper River Basin, continues tonight and into tomorrow over the eastern interior. Variably cloudy to clear here with lighter winds, gradually lightening winds. Same thing for Kodiak Island. Winds will diminish. You won't lose them altogether, but they'll be lighter later tonight. And kind of gusty areas, channeled areas of the North Gulf Coast here and on up along the western Alaska Range. Kind of brisk, but nothing too terribly strong. Out here are the gale force winds in over the central Aleutians with some moisture starting to show up now with that southeast flow into the Fox Islands. Better chances for Nikolsky than there will be for rain in Unalaska. Not too bad for the Alaska Peninsula. Light wind conditions, high pressure there just well over the Russian Far East. But the flow around that still circulating low-level moisture southward. So look for a few flurries, could extend back up toward Tin City and in across maybe Kotzebue Sound and up into the Chukchi Sea. For tomorrow, Monday, front really lifting slowly north and eastward, still kind of stalled out there with the strongest winds right across Atka Island now. Winds increasing for the Fox Islands, and with that increasing chances of light rain, drizzle, or fog and lowering ceilings there, mostly to the south and southwest of the Pribilofs. A break behind the front, high pressure in control in the northern Bering Sea again, as well as right on up into the Arctic there. But the flow coming over the top of that, north to south, keeping it occasionally cloudy, surges of moisture, and mostly flurries and fog. The heavier stuff possibly here. Again, there's that low pulling up into the eastern portions of the Mackenzie River Delta. So those winds could kick up on the extreme east side, maybe 40, possibly gust to 50 miles an hour for a time, but looking at mostly 30-knot winds from the northwest for that marine zone tomorrow. And again, periods of snow here over the eastern interior through tomorrow. Those winter weather advisories are out, and then markedly nicer back to the west. That's where we'll probably see the sunshine tomorrow. Chilly temperatures though, but winds will be lighter. Low pressure in the Gulf, that's going to keep showers in bands moving into the southeast coast, but starting to scatter out a little bit here over the southern areas and not be so widespread as they will be to the north. And looking ahead to Tuesday, still a couple of lows here. One moves inland, so showery conditions again. Looks like another band will form and bring some pretty numerous showers in across mainly the northern and central areas of the southeast coast. And then that'll tend to improve late Tuesday and Tuesday night, or Tuesday evening, but then this is going to start nudging northward and probably bring some rain in over the southern areas late Tuesday night and possibly into Wednesday. So drying out though, could see some sun over the southern areas Tuesday afternoon before that happens. Clear skies and pretty light winds now for Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, another sunny day, and offshore flow here keeping the clouds well out to the west, and then kind of back toward Nunivak Island, and on up into Norton Sound, looking mostly clear with good VFR conditions. Variably cloudy up here across the Seward Peninsula through the Bering Strait, and dry, and still a chance of some flurries or areas of light snow on the north slopes of the Brooks Range there, and staying snowy, but less windy, although still pretty brisk, northwest 20 to 30 knots there for the eastern Arctic coast. No wind here back to the west as high pressure dominates the northwest part of the state. For temperatures today, the 50s, quite evident here by the yellow coloring of the southeast coast. Mid to upper 50s for just about all areas. 52 at Sitka, 57 at AKwx, and they picked about a third of an inch of rain in the last 24 hours. 49, seen some sunshine with the showers ending, a few breaks in the clouds there, just about 50 in Yakutat. 41 Cordova, the snow ended, 32 degrees in Gulkana, and 24 Delta Junction with 31 up at Fairbanks. Otherwise, lower 40s here for the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, although Talkeetna pushed up to 45. About the same in Kodiak with up to the north, Northway, 27 degrees. And the snow all the way back to Fairbanks, a little bit to the west as well. 19 degrees in Anaktuvik, contrast that 33 at Bettles. 27 Arctic Village, Kaktovik, and Dead Horse, as well as Barrow, about the same though, Atchison, 26 degrees. And near 30 all the way down the coastline to Cape Lisburn, lower 30s here over Kotzebue Sound, the northwest interior. 34 at Teller with Nome up to 37. Mid to upper 30s here over all of the southwest interior, with the highest readings, of course, out along the coast. And much the same over Bristol Bay, upper 30s there. And you get back into the 40s here from the Alaska Peninsula all the way out to the Komodorskis. For the lows tonight, single numbers now showing up on the forecast map anyway, with teens up to the north there, and teens to lower 20s all the way down into the Kuskokwim Valley. Those clear areas, of course, we'll see the lowest temperatures and milder conditions out toward the coastline. 40 for the Pribilofs, mid 40s for the Aleutians, and lower to mid 40s here for the southeast coast. For the highs tomorrow, near 50 or into the lower 50s for the Panhandle. Seeing pretty chilly here across the Brooks Range, but upper 20s to near 30 along the Arctic coast. Upper 30s to lower 40s for the southwest interior. Flying weather areas of marginal VFR tomorrow here for the southeast coast. There'll be some breaks in here as well, with that extending possibly into Prince William Sound, but mostly to the east. Areas of IFR, Alaska Range northward, and for the eastern Arctic coast, pretty good VFR to the west, and IFR with that front over the Aleutians. Anaktuvik, IFR in the northern approach at times, VFR to the south. Same forecast for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR either approach. Rainy, could be marginal to start the day. VFR on the east entrance. Windy, marginal. Isabel, IFR. Mentasta, IFR. Tanita, VFR. Portage becoming VFR early. And for Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet here across all of the interior or lower, with the surface tomorrow morning all the way down to the North Gulf Coast, and a little milder over the Aleutians, and this area of warm air getting shoved down to the southeast. With icing threats, not too bad, maybe some lingering stuff up over the North Gulf Coast in the Copper River Basin, and then on up to the north, diminishing over the Panhandle, a narrow area out to the west. And you can see a broad area, upper low pressure, several centers here over the eastern interior. Northwest flow coming over the top of that high, and the main Pacific jet well to the south now, but still cutting in across the central and southern Panhandle. 9,000-foot winds, 30 to 40 knots out here over the Aleutians. Pretty light here over the eastern interior, lighter northwesterlies, but still 25 there on the west coast, west interior. 15 to 20 at 3,000 feet down across Kodiak. Southwest flow continues into the Panhandle. Not much in the way of turbulence there. Could be some mechanical lingering here. Western Alaska Range down across Kodiak Island out in the west. Bumpier though with the stronger winds on the eastern Arctic coast and with that front in the Aleutians. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and today I'm privileged to introduce Dr. Uccellini, the Director of the United States National Weather Service. Welcome back to Alaska, sir.
Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Prior to being the leader of the National Weather Service, your work included an extensive look at snowstorms across the northeastern United States. These are the types of storms that can bring some of the country's largest cities to its knees. Tell me a little bit about your fascination with snow.
Well, as far back as I can remember, I've always been interested in weather, growing up as a kid on Long Island, New York, and was particularly fascinated by snowstorms, why they occurred. The distribution of snow was very varied across the entire region. The rain-snow line, all those things fascinated me right from the get-go. And I was interested in knowing how they worked, how the forecast worked, or more often than not didn't work one way or the other. And that drove me, that interest continued to build and drove me through high school right into college, wanting to be a meteorologist.
Okay, that's a fascinating story, and I think every meteorologist has a weather story like that in some way.
Right.
Due to Alaska's size and proximity to the North Pole, sometimes it's difficult to detect and analyze the weather patterns over Alaska. What's the National Weather Service doing to improve that weather detection?
Well, observations in this type of environment is a big challenge, whether it's from space or from what we call in situ observations from the ground or within the systems. Clearly, satellites have been playing an increasing role in providing the big picture, not only from a visual sense in what you see is occurring, but also from providing the data for numerical models that then are used to actually predict the weather. Alaska is actually pretty well positioned with respect to polar orbiting satellites, since you get a faster return of those satellites over your particular area. And in fact, the polar satellite system is the backbone for the observations that we use in our models, especially our global models, and they're particularly important for observing weather features that affect Alaska.
Alaskans live and die by the weather every day, and one of the strategic goals of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Weather Service is to develop a more weather-ready nation. What does it mean for Alaskans to be weather-ready?
Well, the strategic outcome is based on people being ready, responsive, and therefore resilient to the increasing threats to extreme weather events. Those threats are related to not only the nature of the events, but the fact that we're becoming more vulnerable to them as we have more people, more infrastructure that could be affected by these events. So we have to ensure that the observations we make for situational awareness, the forecasts we make for people to take the proper responses, are connected to people's actions, the response to these events, so that they will be more resilient to what's facing them. You know, there are examples with respect to hurricanes. More people living along the coastline takes longer to evacuate. We have to make better forecasts with longer lead times, but we also have to communicate the threats so people will actually take action to avoid those storms. Up here you have, as in other parts of the United States, an increasing threat related to fire. As there are more people living in fire-prone areas, we have to ensure that our forecasts are good, that we don't have false alarms that make people not react to the forecast when in fact they should. But we also have to be able to communicate the threat and make sure that we're working with the partners in the emergency management community so that communities and right down to individuals will actually take the proper responses in the face of these events. So that's the strategic goal. There are a lot of challenges for us in terms of improving forecasts, but also improving our communication skills and linking with the emergency management communities that are actually out there trying to protect lives and mitigate property loss.
So a huge partnership effort going forward.
That's one of the important keys for the success of meeting the strategic goal.
Okay. Well, one of the things you're talking about was understanding the weather information we're getting back from the computers, weather modeling, and you did a lot of work with that in some of your prior positions with the Environmental Prediction Center there, the National Center for Environmental Prediction. What can you tell us about recent improvements in that weather modeling? And you were using the polar orbiters as kind of a source of information that started that process.
Well, you know, first of all, we have to recognize that everything you see, you read and hear about weather, climate, or ocean forecasts are all driven by numerical models. Now, it really has been the revolution in our forecast process in the last part of the 20th century. The success of that numerical enterprise is based on three factors: big computers, global data, not just local data, but you have to have a global data set, and then the models themselves, the science that's behind the models and in running the models in an operational mode. So we're working to improve all three of those components. We upgraded our computers last year. We're going through another upgrade even as I speak. We'll be upgrading from 200 trillion calculations per second to 700 trillion calculations per second by January of 2015. This increase in the computer will allow us to run what we call Earth system models. It's not just the atmosphere, it's the atmosphere, ocean, ice, which is obviously very important up here, and land models that are all coupled together at higher resolution. So you need the big computers, you need the science that allows us to run these models and run them in a parallel mode, and that they're coupled so that the ocean effects could affect the atmosphere and vice versa, as an example. And then the global observations are absolutely critical, and over the last 20, 30 years they've become more dependent upon the satellite systems, and especially the polar orbiting satellites, which help drive the observations needed for those models, whether they be atmospheric observations, land, ice observations. We're deriving more and more of that from satellites now that feed into these models and produce forecasts with extended lead times. Now, out, you know, for extreme events especially, we're seeing much improved forecast out in the 4, 5, 6, 7, and even 8-day range, which gets us back to Weather Ready Nation, because if you're going to get ready for a storm event, you want those consistent forecasts approaching that event from day 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, so you can take the actions several days in advance that can help mitigate the property loss and protect your livelihood.
Okay, all part of the mission of protecting life and property. Dr. Uccellini, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and speaking to Alaskans and sharing how the National Weather Service is working for Alaska and the nation. Wish you safe travels around the 49th. Enjoy your time here, sir. And for Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
Welcome back. Mostly southwest winds, lighter, 20 to 25 along the coast, and 10 to 15 over the inside waters. Could hang on to those small craft advisories into tomorrow morning there for the Lincoln on Glacier Bay, but then that becomes variable and switches around to northerly, but light out of the north up there, and southwest 10 knots, light variable winds here. Kind of a weak ridge of high pressure right over this area ahead of that next system coming up toward the Queen Charlotte, so light variable winds there, and pretty light and variable along the remainder of the coast as well. For Prince William Sound, northwest 20, higher gusts out of bays and passes tomorrow. 20 to 25 knot winds here for the north and western Gulf Coast. Coming down 25 knots, the Barren Islands back into Kamishak Bay. 15 to 20 across Kodiak Island. Northerlies 20 to 25 or so here through Cook Inlet at times. And then lighter winds in store for Tuesday, north 10 to 15 for Cook Inlet. Light northwesterlies, lighter 10 to 15. Kamishak Bay across the Barrens, pretty light for Kodiak, and northwest 15 there for the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound. Bristol Bay north at 10, northwest 10, southwest of Kodiak Island. Southeasterlies increasing to 20 knots there for the Alaska Peninsula. Northeast 20 on Tuesday for Bristol Bay. Northeast down only at about 10 for the area southwest of Kodiak. Small craft advisories for southeast winds on the Pacific side of the peninsula and easterlies here on the Bering Sea side. With the Aleutians tomorrow, lighter southwesterlies here back to the west. Ahead of the front, gale force winds coming up to small craft advisory levels there for the Fox Islands. And then for Tuesday, again that typhoon well to the south there, not quite making it on the map, but that front will lift northward, so these winds in the west will be a little lighter, but trailing back through this area, 40-knot southeasterlies for the Fox Islands. The Bering Sea tomorrow, north 10 up there around St. Lawrence Island. Easterlies maybe 20 knots here for St. Matthew Island. Small craft advisories coming into the Pribilofs, and northeast 10 to 15 along the coast. Tuesday, 20 knots there for the southwest coast. Gales for the Pribilofs, and easterlies coming up to 30 knots even for the northern Bering Sea area. Northeast 25 for St. Lawrence Island. The Arctic coast probably won't make 40 knots, but could pick up, definitely will pick up. Northwest 30 tomorrow through most of the afternoon, diminishing back to northwest and lighter, and then really light here with high pressure on Tuesday and just about no gradient, except here on the east side again, 20 to 30 knots at times through Tuesday. For tonight, fair and dry back here to the west with less wind along the coast, and showers continue to diminish along with the winds here for the Panhandle, but several bands, they won't end altogether. That west-southwest flow with the low remaining in the Gulf. Winter weather advisories here tonight through tomorrow for additional snow in the eastern interior. Could be some snow showers, Copper River Basin. Showers definitely along the North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle. Fair in the west, and that front continues in the Bering Sea. Mostly sunny here over the interior with less in the way of snow showers over the east side. Have a great evening, and thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.